My wife mocked my failing business while spending my savings on luxury trips, so I sold everything, vanished, and now she's begging the man she betrayed to come back. I'm a 32-year-old man, and a few years ago, I thought I was living the dream. I'd finally escaped the 9-to-5 grind, leaving behind fluorescent lights and endless meetings to build something that mattered, my own sustainable furniture business. For years, I'd sketched designs on napkins during lunch breaks, whispering to myself that one day I'd turn wood and patience into something real. When I told my wife, Emily, she smiled like I'd just handed her the stars. "You're the man with vision," she said. Those words carried me for months. In the beginning, it felt like we were partners in a shared dream. Our apartment smelled of sawdust and takeout, and our nights stretched long. Me sanding rough edges, her sitting cross-legged nearby, editing photos of the pieces I built. She'd bring me coffee at 2 a.m., teasing, "Don't fall asleep on the lathe, Picasso." We'd laugh, tired but happy. I remember thinking, this is love, building something together. But reality has a way of wearing you down quietly. The orders came slowly. Profit was thin, sometimes non-existent. I still remember her tone the first time she asked, "So, when do we start making real money?" It was casual, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I brushed it off, telling her growth takes time. She nodded but sighed, the kind of sigh that stays in your chest long after. Then the jokes began, small at first. "Maybe you should build a chair for our bills to sit on." It stung, but I told myself she was just stressed. I kept pushing forward, convinced that love meant patience and perseverance. But some nights, when she scrolled through travel blogs while I sketched designs in silence, I could feel the distance stretching like a crack in the wood, small, but spreading, and I had no idea how deep it would go. The shift didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, like watching a flower wilt day by day, knowing you watered it but still losing it. Emily stopped visiting my workshop. The laughter that once echoed in those sawdust-scented walls faded into silence. I'd come upstairs after long nights of carving and find her on the couch, scrolling through Instagram travel pages, sighing at photos of beaches and villas. One evening, I placed a newly finished oak table in front of her, proud of its clean lines and polish. "It's beautiful," she said flatly, barely glancing up. "But who's gonna buy it?" The words cut deeper than I expected. I tried to joke it off. "Someone will, eventually." She gave a small laugh that wasn't kind. "Eventually," she repeated, like it was the punchline to a joke I didn't get. The small remarks grew sharper. "You know, Tom's husband just got promoted again. Maybe you should get a part-time job. Just until things pick up." Each comment felt like a reminder that I wasn't enough. I started second-guessing my dream, our dream. When I'd tell her about a potential client, she'd roll her eyes and say, "You said that last month." There were moments I caught her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking, eyes full of something between pity and disgust. I began to dread coming home from supply runs. I could feel her disappointment hanging in the air, thicker than the smell of varnish on my clothes. One night, I overheard her on the phone whispering, "I can't live like this much longer." My chest tightened. The woman who once believed in me now sounded trapped, suffocating. I stood frozen outside the door, every beat of my heart echoing her words, and that was the first time I truly felt afraid that love might not survive failure. The day I checked our bank account, my stomach dropped. Numbers don't lie, and the numbers said something was very wrong. Nearly half our savings were gone. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, thinking maybe I'd made a mistake. But no, the withdrawals were clear. Airline charges, hotel stays, designer boutique. All from our joint account. When I confronted Emily, she didn't even look guilty. She sighed and said, "Relax. I needed a break, and Lisa found this amazing deal to Bali. I just borrowed from our savings. I'll replace it when I get my bonus." Her tone was so casual it made me feel insane. "You borrowed from our savings?" I asked quietly. "Emily, that's everything we had for the business." She rolled her eyes. "Well, maybe if your business actually made something, we wouldn't be in this position." That line hit like a hammer to the chest. I remember just standing there, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly deafening. I didn't yell, I couldn't. I felt small. Like a man who had nothing left to defend, I told myself it was a one-time mistake. I wanted to believe she was just stressed, that we could fix this if I worked harder. I started taking side jobs, odd carpentry gigs, furniture repairs, anything that brought in a few extra dollars. Meanwhile, Emily's lifestyle didn't change. More spa appointments, more packages arriving at the door. Late one night, I sat at my workbench staring at my reflection in a piece of polished walnut. My eyes looked hollow, like someone who'd been sanding his own soul down for years. I whispered, "You're doing this for love." But even then, the words felt like a lie, and deep down, I think she knew it too. It happened at a dinner party. Emily's coworkers had invited us, a mix of polished professionals who talked about stocks, brands, and vacations like they were weekly chores. I already felt out of place, my calloused hands resting awkwardly on the wine glass. But I smiled, tried to fit in. I wanted her to be proud of me, or at least not embarrassed. When someone asked what I did, I told them about my furniture business, how I built every piece by hand. Before I could finish, Emily laughed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He calls it a business," she said, waving her hand like it was harmless fun. "But it's basically a very expensive hobby right now." The table went silent, then erupted in nervous laughter. I froze. The air felt heavy, the kind that presses down on your chest. I tried to smile, but my face didn't move. My heart pounded as I looked at her, the woman who once called me her visionary, now looking at me like a joke she was tired of pretending to love. She kept talking, oblivious. "I keep telling him to get a real job, but he's too romantic about his wood." More laughter. I felt like a ghost at my own funeral. When we got home, I finally said, "You humiliated me." She didn't even look up from removing her earrings. "Oh, don't be so dramatic." "They were joking," I replied softly. "You were joking." She shrugged. "Maybe you should toughen up." That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my workshop under the flickering light, staring at my tools, the only things that had never betrayed me. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt empty, like the man she fell in love with had already died, and I was just the echo left behind. And deep down, I knew something had just broken beyond repair. A few weeks after that dinner party, I was in the workshop trying to get my mind off everything by organizing invoices and receipts. I opened our shared cloud folder to find a delivery invoice, but instead I found a subfolder I'd never noticed before. It was labeled Lisa Trips. At first I thought it was just photos from their vacation, but when I clicked inside, my stomach turned. Screenshots of flight confirmations, credit card statements, charges to a luxury resort in Italy, all made with a card under my name. There were even messages between Emily and Lisa. "He doesn't even check. He's too busy pretending to be an entrepreneur." Lisa replied, "Girl, you've got it figured out. Keep him broke enough to stay humble." I froze, my hand trembling over the mouse. My chest felt tight, like the air itself had turned against me. It wasn't just carelessness or stress, it was betrayal, planned and intentional. I scrolled further and saw photos of them holding wine glasses, laughing under the sun, captions like, "Deserved luxury after dealing with a dreamer." I couldn't breathe. My pulse roared in my ears. I remember gripping the edge of my desk until my knuckles turned white. The woman who once called my work beautiful was out there mocking the same dream she'd helped me start. I wanted to storm upstairs, confront her, scream, break something, but I didn't. I just sat there, listening to the faint sound of her laughter from the living room, and something inside me went quiet. Not weak, not broken, but cold. That night, for the first time, I didn't fall asleep thinking about how to fix things. I fell asleep planning, and in that silence, my revenge was born. After that night, something in me switched off. The pleading, the explanations, the hope, gone. I stopped trying to convince Emily of my worth. Instead, I became what she wanted me to be: quiet, compliant, predictable. She mistook my silence for defeat. But in reality, I was taking notes, mentally marking every weakness, every secret she thought she'd hidden from me. I started with the finances. Quietly, I closed the business account tied to our joint name and opened a new one under a separate LLC I'd registered months earlier. I began liquidating unused materials and older pieces, selling them to local shops for cash. Every dollar went into that new account. When Emily asked why I wasn't depositing money anymore, I shrugged. "Sales are slow." She barely looked up from her phone. "I sold the old truck she hated and told her it broke down." I pawned the jewelry she'd borrowed from me years ago and never wore. Slowly, I was building my escape fund, small enough to go unnoticed, steady enough to matter. Meanwhile, I played the role perfectly. I complimented her more, listened to her stories about her hard week at work, nodded when she talked about another potential trip with Lisa. I even smiled when she called me her stay-at-home craftsman. Every fake grin was a brick in the wall I was building between us. At night, I'd lie beside her pretending to sleep, staring at the ceiling, planning every move down to the hour. I knew one wrong step and she'd realize something was changing. And Emily wasn't the kind of woman who handled losing control well. By the time she booked her next trip, I had everything in motion: bank accounts, storage space, and an exit plan. All that was left was to let her leave one last time, before I disappeared for good. Emily's next self-care retreat came sooner than I expected. She packed her designer suitcase with the ease of someone used to leaving. "Don't wait up for me," she said, kissing me on the cheek like she was doing me a favor. I stood there smiling just enough to make it believable. When the door closed behind her, the silence that followed felt like a living thing, heavy, suffocating, final. I walked through our house and saw everything differently. The furniture I built with my hands, the same hands she mocked, sat there like silent witnesses. Every corner held a memory I didn't want anymore. I went to the workshop, sat in front of my tools, and let the exhaustion crash over me. For the first time in years, I cried. Not quiet tears, the kind that come from somewhere deep, raw, and ancient. I whispered, "I gave you everything." My voice cracked, echoing against the walls. I'd sold my future for someone who laughed at my failure. The weight of every sacrifice, every insult, every moment of begging her to believe in me, it all pressed down until I couldn't breathe. That was my breaking point. Rock bottom. The man who once believed love could fix anything was gone. All that remained was the version of me she created, stripped down, angry, focused. When the tears stopped, I took a long breath and stood up. I started taking photos of my remaining inventory, cataloging every item I could sell. I knew what I had to do. There was no going back now, not to her, not to this life, not to who I used to be. By the time the sun rose, I'd made my choice. The next time Emily came home, she'd come back to nothing. The morning she left for her wellness getaway, I drove her to the airport like the perfect husband. She kissed me goodbye, said, "Try not to mope around too much, okay?" And walked away without looking back. I watched her disappear through security, her perfume still clinging to my shirt. That was the last time I saw her as my wife. By the time her flight took off, I was already in motion. I listed the house for a private sale through a contact who owed me a favor. Cash only, no questions. Every tool, every piece of furniture, every scrap of wood from my workshop was sold to local collectors and craftsmen. The business she mocked was funding my freedom. I even sold her car. The luxury SUV she claimed was her reward for surviving my failures. I deleted my social media, forwarded my business emails to a dummy address, and transferred the last of my hidden funds to a new bank account in another state. The storage unit I'd rented was packed with essentials: my father's old watch, a few clothes, and the prototype chair that started it all. Everything else, why, gone. Before I left, I wrote her a note on our kitchen counter. "You wanted a man who knew his worth. You just never thought he'd find it without you." I locked the door behind me, tossed the keys into the mailbox, and drove until the city lights vanished in the rearview mirror. There was no music, no celebration, just quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't hurt anymore. When her plane landed and she came home, there'd be no house, no car, no husband, only emptiness. And for the first time in years, that emptiness would finally belong to her. I didn't drive far that night, just enough to escape the city's glow. I found a small town a few hours north, quiet and forgotten, the kind of place where people still nodded to strangers. I rented a small cabin behind a mechanic's shop and paid 3 months up front in cash. It smelled of oil, pine, and freedom. For the first time in years, I woke up without dread gnawing at my chest. At first, the silence was terrifying. I wasn't used to peace. Every creak of the cabin made me expect her voice, that sharp edge of mockery I'd grown accustomed to. But days passed, and the silence began to heal me. I started building again, Not for profit, not for validation, just for me. Tables, chairs, lamps, simple things that felt honest beneath my hands. I posted a few of my pieces online under a new name, just to see if anyone would notice. They did. A local boutique reached out first, then a design blog featured my work, calling it Furniture with Soul. Orders started trickling in. Slowly, the account that once held scraps began to grow again. There were nights I'd sit outside with a beer, listening to crickets, watching the stars. No shouting, no disappointment, just the hum of life quietly forgiving me for staying too long where I wasn't loved. Sometimes, I'd think about her, not with anger anymore, but with a strange sense of gratitude. She'd burned me down to nothing, but in the ashes, I found something stronger. One morning, while sanding a table, I got a notification on my phone, a name I hadn't seen in months, Emily, and for the first time, instead of fear, I smiled. Her first message was short. "Where are you?" No apology, no context, and just confusion. I ignored it. A few hours later came another. "The house is empty. Are you okay?" Then a barrage, texts, missed calls, emails from addresses I'd forgotten existed. The tone shifted fast from irritation to panic. "You can't just disappear like this." "We need to talk," I didn't respond. I sat at my new workbench, smoothing a piece of cedar, letting the rhythmic scrape of sandpaper drown her voice in my head. But she didn't stop. "The next day, I messed up, okay? I was scared. Please, just call me." Then photos, her sitting on the steps of the empty house, mascara streaked, captions like, "Please come home." Weeks later, the messages grew desperate. "I lost my job. Lisa moved to another city. I don't have anyone." I could almost hear the panic in her typing, the same woman who once called me pathetic now begging the failure she abandoned. Part of me wanted to laugh, part of me wanted to pity her, but mostly I felt nothing. I read one message over and over. "You're the only man who ever loved me for real. Please, I'll do anything to fix this." I didn't reply. I didn't block her either. I just let her words sit there, a monument to every insult, every dismissal, every cruel smirk she'd thrown my way. That night, I posted a new video of my latest work, a handcrafted oak chair engraved with the words, "Worth is built, not given." It went viral overnight. When I saw her name flash again the next morning, I finally opened her latest message. "I'm in your city, please." Just one meeting. And for the first time, I didn't hesitate to say yes. We met at a small cafe downtown, neutral ground. I got there early, sat by the window, and ordered black coffee. My hands didn't shake. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was real, I felt strangely calm. When Emily walked in, I barely recognized her. The woman who once strutted through life with polished nails and expensive perfume looked worn, fragile, like life had taken its payment. She spotted me, froze, then forced a trembling smile. "You actually came," she whispered, sliding into the seat across from me. Her voice was soft, unfamiliar. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, and the fear. "I didn't know what else to do," she started. "I've been trying to reach you for months. I'm sorry." Her words cracked halfway through. I sipped my coffee, said nothing. She kept going. "I was stupid. I thought I was better than all this, better than you, but you were the only real thing in my life." I studied her, searching for sincerity, or maybe just closure. "You humiliated me, Emily," I said quietly. "You laughed while I bled for us." Tears filled her eyes. "I know. I lost everything after you left. My job, my friends, even Lisa stopped talking to me. I deserve this. I just wanted you to know that I'm not that person anymore." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the nights I begged for her belief. The time she twisted the knife with a smile. I leaned back, calm and final. "You didn't destroy me," I said. "You built the man who finally respects himself." Her face fell. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "Goodbye, Emily." I left her there, surrounded by silence, staring at the man she never thought would walk away. And for once, I didn't look back. It's been a year since that cafe meeting, and sometimes I still think about how peaceful the air felt when I walked out, like stepping out of a storm that had raged for years. I didn't block Emily after that. I didn't need to. Her last message came 2 months later, a single line. I hope you found the peace I couldn't give you. I never replied. Some things don't need closure, they just need distance. My new life is simple, and I like it that way. The business that once barely survived now thrives. My designs are featured in magazines. Clients wait months for custom orders, and I even teach weekend workshops to local craftsmen. But the part that means the most? I wake up every morning knowing I don't owe my worth to anyone's approval. Sometimes when I run my fingers along a finished table, I think back to those years of ridicule, the laughter, the cold silence, the humiliation. For a long time, I thought those moments broke me. Now I realize they forged me. The same pain that once made me question my purpose ended up carving out my identity. People ask why I never remarried, why I live alone in a cabin instead of some fancy place. I just smile and say, because peace doesn't need witnesses. I've learned that revenge doesn't always come from payback. Sometimes it's simply thriving where they hoped you'd fall. Emily wanted a man who would bow to her world. Instead, she created one who built his own. I finish each piece of furniture with a small engraving on the underside, words only I can see when it's done. Made from the ruins of what tried to break me. And every time I run my thumb across that line, I remember, I didn't just survive her betrayal. I turned it into art.